Alrighty, and welcome. This is actually the first one that I'll be making, and I made a doozy. This is the Nürburgring Nordschleife Industriefahrten circuit. This is basically everything but the GP circuit, and for this week in iRacing, it is actually being done right around midnight, so the whole lap will be at nighttime. So let's begin. So coming off this first corner, we're going to be up in 5th gear going into the first corner. And going into the corner, you want to see this white line here that separates pit lane. You kind of want to ride along it just so you can have a big sweep going into the first corner. But so basically what I do for this corner is as soon as I get past this pit wall here, I shoot over a little bit just going into the line, and then I'm hard on the brakes going from 5th gear down to 3rd gear. And then this is kind of a little bit of a late apex corner, but once I turn in to the apex, I just go straight at the corner for a bit, and then as soon as I'm done doing the heavy braking, I start turning into the corner and get on the gas kind of just as I am getting through the corner and making sure I track all the way out. So now down here, down into 6th gear, you want to kind of keep it wide, turn in as little as possible. And then for this next corner, which they call the Hatzenbach, I'm not going to pronounce all of these, but all of these have different names that was kind of cool to learn and get to know while I was trying to make this lap guide. But this is kind of like a corner or a series of turns that I take in 2 stages here. So first we have this left-hand turn, which is pretty simple, but you can definitely lose the car going through here. So for this first portion of it, I wait until I'm past all this paint that's on the road. The paint on the road will be useful throughout most of the track, as usually where the paint stops is where you're going to want to brake and turn. So I just briefly go down to 5th gear while driving at the apex, and then I turn in for the corner, straighten the car out, and then get right on the brakes again for the second part of the corner, which I go down into 4th gear and kind of try to hug the apex here. And then I excel kind of midway through the corner, and that should give you just enough speed to kind of exit onto the outside of the corner there. And you're fine going onto that, but obviously don't go too far onto the grass, otherwise it'll catch you and send you into the wall. Then for these series of corners, little left, then right, then left, I'm up into 5th gear here, and again, using the paint as my braking zone, I start braking while I'm on the paint, and I'm in 5th gear right now. I shoot down to 4th gear in this one, or you can stay in 5th gear, but eventually through these 2 corners you're going to want to end in 4th gear in some way. And then going into this corner, you can see this little gray curb right there. You're totally fine going onto that. I do sometimes if I really am trying to push the car, but you're totally fine just staying on the regular pavement here. So on this lap, I kind of just hug the curb. And then note, there is a little hump there in the road. You will tend to catch air there. For this lap, for some reason, I don't. It was the only lap I did that I didn't do that, so I don't know if I was doing something right or not. But just as I come out of that corner, I'm already on the brakes for the next corner, and I already turned my wheel going into that corner. So then I can accelerate basically through the entire corner, and then track out to this exit curb on the outside here. Now for this next series of 2 corners, it's pretty simple, but again, I use kind of the paint in the road, but for me, I tend to not use the paint, especially on this one. I just typically try to just keep turning after that previous corner until I get all the way to the left side of this one. And as soon as I get to the left side is when I start braking and turning in for the next corner, from 5th gear down to 4th gear. This curb you are able to cut, and I recommend that you cut it. I think it helps for me. But basically my right wheels are all the way on this gray curb here. And then, yeah, accelerating basically, yeah, through the entire corner, kind of like the previous corner. And then this final little turn, it's okay to go on the grass a little bit here. It's totally fine. That's usually what I do. And then you should have enough speed that you won't go too far over there. Then we're going up the hill to these 2 corners. I don't lift at all here. I just go full throttle, but I make sure that when I go through these 2 corners that I use as little turn as possible to make both the corners. So you'll see me come and hit this apex, go out wide, then hit the next apex here. Alright. Yeah, you're staying in 6th gear through there. I'll skip ahead to the next bit here. So this next one's pretty simple. Again, you full throttle. You want to find this apex as much as possible, and then you kind of want to hug it. Your car will naturally kind of slide out, but you should only finish right about here towards the middle of the track. And then for this corner, what I do is I use the pavement change, which is also another thing that's very useful to look for in the track. So I'm braking basically as soon as I get to the change in pavement. I brake from 6th down to 4th. Yeah, so I'm kind of hugging the left side as I'm braking. And then another thing to note, the pavement changes back to the darker black, I guess, or whatever. That's where I start turning in for the corner. And then I'm kind of just trail braking through like a little bit of this corner here. But the key is hugging this apex here while not trying to get on it. So kind of just keeping your tires along this white line. And then kind of easing the throttle as I get out of the corner, throttle towards the end of the corner, and you should be able to slide just out onto this curb. Typically you're fine going onto this gray curb, but just be careful because it doesn't go for too long. You can get off in the grass and get an off track there. Yeah, so this next corner can be played many different ways. I like to say that there's 2 ways to play this corner. It's either aggressive or conservative. And I believe I do an aggressive approach to this corner. But basically I kind of look for this sign right here. That's kind of where I look to start turning in. And the trick is, it's going to look like you're turning in way too early for this corner, but the earlier you go, the more you can cut the corner. So I go right at basically the grass here. That's kind of where I go. It kind of unsettles the car over the curb, but it's enough where you're carrying enough speed to go pretty fast through here. Now, if you want to be conservative, you can keep it outside of that, which is totally fine. You'll just have to lift a little more. But I basically go right over this bump, which doesn't really affect the car too much. You're not going to get damage going over a bump like that. It's pushing it, but I don't think you get damage. But basically, as soon as my car lands, or at least feel like it lands from this bump, it may just go off this ridge, is when I start braking for the next corner here, as you'll see. Yeah, so I go from 6th down to 4th here. I'm hunting for the start of this apex. And basically kind of try to hug it, but I slowly fade away from the apex. And then find the other curb there on the left side in 4th. And then after that corner, once I get straightened out and I kind of look to get as close to this curb as possible without touching it, I start braking basically as I see this little sidewalk paint right in front of me. That's also when I start turning in for the corner. So you'll see me go down to third, and I'll kind of shoot to the outside, kind of out there, but you don't want to go all the way out because it'll kill some speed. But then I'm immediately, once I'm in third right now, which is what I'm in, I'm turning in for this corner. This is another late apex corner that you want to kind of hit almost as you're going into the next corner, kind of like that. So I'm throttle out, yeah. So as soon as I'm like almost turning into this corner is when I'm already full throttle. Let's see if I have any other. Yeah, so I'm full throttle through here. And then I start turning in for the next corner basically as soon as I get straightened out from that corner. So I start turning in. I'm very easy on the throttle through here as you don't want to be up on this curb, but you don't want to be too far away from this curb. So again, you kind of want to have your wheels hug onto that white line there. If you get onto this curb, it can unsettle the car sometimes, and it can send you pretty wide coming off the corner. But don't be scared of this curb. If you hit it, it's fine. I think I actually hit it in this lap. No. Okay. So I kind of just ease on the throttle. And then as soon as I know that I'm going to get out of the corner is when I start throttling again. This curb you can definitely run on. I think I do. Yeah, I do a little bit. There's quite a bit of room off of that curb. So now we're coming down to these two little corners. Kind of a little bend here, but I start this corner all the way on the right side, and I kind of look for where this little strip of pavement changes again, another pavement change. That's when I start turning into the corner. For this one, I lift, and I kind of coast through the corner just to make sure that I make it. And then I'm kind of easy back onto the throttle. I kind of completely missed this apex a little bit, but that's okay. Because I'm just easy on the throttle as I go all the way out to the right side again. And then for this next one, there isn't really a braking zone that I have for this. This is more of a feel corner for me. But what I'd say is brake when it feels like your car is fully past the end of this little curb here. And then I'm hard on the brakes. I'm going down from 6th down to 4th. Yeah, you see I kind of didn't do a good enough job of turning in, so I had to return into the corner. And then you're going to want to hug this apex again, another curb that you don't necessarily want to hit because it could unsettle the car. So yeah, so then I just kind of accelerate through kind of after halfway through the corner. And then you can go out all the way to this curb. But just be careful if you do go all the way out to here and you try to swing it back around to the right, that wall could be your friend. I do kind of hit the curb a little bit, but I've got enough space that I can just run off of there. So just be careful with that corner. Then this one is a double right. Let's see. Oh. Alright. So this one, it's a downhill right-hander. What I use for this one is I watch for this curb right here, and when it seems like it's like, I don't know, I'd say a car length or two in front of my car is when I start braking for this. So if I back it up right about yonder is when I start heavy braking for this. So I'm in 5th gear right now, and I kind of almost already start turning into the corner. Yeah, I kind of try to hug this inside a little bit, but I give enough room to this curb just because you want to apex the second curb more. In this lap, I really didn't do too good of a job of finding that second apex, but I just kind of hung it around towards the inside of this corner, and then I'm able to accelerate out. So even if you don't really hit the apex, you're fine. Just don't have too much speed going into this because this curb is pretty deadly. So yeah, so I'm really trying to turn. This is where that second apex is that you kind of want to get close to. But as soon as you hit that, that's when you're going to want to accelerate out of the corner. And then this curb is fine. It's kind of dangerous to go on, just because you don't want to go too far because that wall will be your friend. But if you can just stay on the red and white curb, that is the ideal line through there. And this little curve right here, and once you get off of that, then you're in the corner that's called hit or miss hit miss, and you'll see why here. So once you shoot all the way to the left of the corner, you want to find when this gray curb is ending. That's when your braking zone is going to be right about there. And then what you're going to want to do with this is you're going to want to shoot it down into 5th gear from 6th. That's the first curb. You want to miss that. Then you want to get real close to this one, so you want to hit that. And then basically once you get through this, you're able to accelerate. I think I kind of, yeah, so I kind of give it a little bit of gas through the first one just because I know I'm really close to it. Then you want to let off once you get to the second one and accelerate as soon as you get off of it. So you miss that third one, hence the name miss hit miss. Then you can accelerate all the way to the outside of this corner here. Okay, so then this next one, it's kind of a tricky one. The car can really get unsettled here if you brake too early or too late, or if you hit the curb. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to watch for this curb right here. As soon as you see most of this curb is when you want to start braking. So I can see a little bit here, so I'm telling myself, okay, I can brake now. I go from 6th gear down to 4th gear. I hit 4th gear as soon as I hit basically this apex. You kind of want to hug this apex. And then giving a little room, but once you are done with that, you can go straight off, like kind of off this apex, but you want to go straight at the next corner. Down to 3rd gear and start turning once you get in line with that apex. So you can kind of swing out wide a little bit here, but eventually for the second apex on the left, that's the one that you want to hit. So I kind of trail brake a little bit through this corner. But as soon as I see this apex and I know that I'm going to be close to this apex is when I start accelerating out of the corner. And then this last little corner, you just want to kind of be close to it, and you can track out here. And these next two, I'm up in the 6th gear here. And then what I do is I use the paint on this one, so I find basically as I'm almost past all the paint for my braking zone. From here I go from 6th to 5th. It's kind of a brief braking, and I kind of trail brake into the corner. I find this apex. I think I hit this apex, which you don't exactly want to do, just because the apex is unsettle the car. And then I try to kind of find a way to ride this curb, so I don't actually accelerate until I get at the curb, and that's just because I went a little wide. But you can kind of ride this curb. You don't want to ride as much as I do, because the curb kind of just grabs your car a little bit there. But you also want to be then set up for this next corner. So after this corner, I try to shoot all the way to the left here. And then right before the red and white curb go away, I turn in way too early for this corner. But what you want to do is right before the red and white curb go away, so right about there is when you want to start turning into this corner. This one you can just kind of tap the brake a little bit, or maybe hit the brake a little harder. I don't know. I think I go just barely to 50% and then I ease off. But you should be able to use this cambered corner to be close to this apex. So I kind of just like feather the throttle and brake through the corner. But this is another one where you kind of want to wait until you're out of the corner to start accelerating, just because if you start accelerating too early and you hit this curb, it will grab you and the grass will grab you and that wall will be your friend. Just because you come off of a cambered corner and then it gets to a flat corner, which you're not going to have as much grip through. And then it's okay to kind of ride the grass through or after that corner. Then down the run to this next double right here. The one thing that I shoot for is the road kind of kinks here a little bit. It kind of kinks out. That's what my braking zone is for this corner. That's what I kind of shoot for. So I kind of use the kink in the road and start braking pretty heavily from 6th down to 4th. I kind of stay to the outside of this corner until it starts to turn in, and that's when I decide to turn in. And then again, this is a double right, late apex, so you do not want to hit this apex. But this one you want to get as close to as possible. You want to try and stay off the curb for unsettling purposes, though. And then as soon as you are through the corner is when you can start accelerating. So I start accelerating once I'm through the corner, and then naturally the car will slide out to the outside here where you can ride that curb a little bit. Obviously don't ride it too much. So yeah, so now the climb up the mountain here. A brief note about these two corners. I try to stay as far to the right side as possible. I even get on this little gray curb here. And then just to conserve tires and not to burn off so much speed, since this thing doesn't really have that much power, I try to turn in as little as possible. So I try to get the biggest runoff both going into the corner and going out of the corner. So yes, there's a little bit of runoff there just in case you do go too wide. But yeah, so then continuing the run up here. Then for this next corner, which is kind of tricky, I even screwed it up in this lap. But what you want to find is you want to find where this curb kind of like pushes out or kinks out the most. That's where you want to start braking, right about here. I'm a little late, hence the line that I take through this corner. But you want to kind of follow this straight. You don't want to follow the curb. You want to follow it straight. You want to go from 6 to what did I say? 6 to 4th. And another thing that I says, you want to try to hug the inside of this curb. So yeah, so I A, brake too late, and B, kind of kick out a little bit, which causes me to run this corner wide. But you want to kind of try to hang on to the inside of this corner. That's the ideal line. I kind of run the middle line. But basically, once you are around halfway through the corner, you're able to accelerate out. Even with my line down the middle of the track, I'm able to accelerate out pretty early through the corner and still not really necessarily reach this outside here. But yeah, I mean, the thing with holding the inside here is you can hold the inside here, but if you see, the curb kind of flattens out here and then it goes back to a turn, so you just want to be careful with that, as you want to stay off of these curbs here. But then you're able to just normally track out there. And then through the carousel here, you want to take as straight of an angle as possible going into the carousel. So I kind of try to just touch where this curb kinks here. Ooh, I missed the button. You want to try just where this touches here. And then that's kind of where I start braking for the carousel. I'll shoot down into fourth gear from here. And my target is I want my front left wheel to kind of ride the inside of this striped pavement here for the carousel. So I kind of take a straight on approach here. And then basically with the carousel, it's all feel. You just need to feel what's the right speed to keep it through the entire carousel. You don't want to you don't want to brake too hard through here, yet you also don't want to be too heavy in the throttle through here. You just want to kind of ease it through. And then obviously if you feel like you're sliding down to the inside here, you want to give it more throttle. If you feel like you're sliding up there, you'd give it less throttle. But coming out of the carousel, once I kind of see my exit point here, that's when I start getting on the throttle. And what I shoot for when it comes to the carousel is I shoot for this corner of this striped pavement. I try to just shoot right over that, as you have a little bit of track there, but you also have the curb there, which will save you if you go too deep. So then we go up the hill a little bit here, and then we have these two corners, the left and the right, and then I guess the right after that. These are tricky if you have too much speed through them. If you have a fast car, you definitely can take these almost full throttle. I kind of ease on the throttle just to make sure that I get through the corners. But you want to just kind of like slowly turn into the corner, and then when you hit the apex, since it's a little cambered, you're able to then kind of hug this apex here and just feather the throttle. And then same thing for this right. As soon as you get through the previous corner, you want to turn into this corner and just hug this apex here without actually getting on the curb, because then you're able to be full throttle as you track out here onto this curb. You can run a little bit onto here, but be careful. If this car gets unsettled and you go over this curb, it can keep going and go into the wall. I've done that many times. If I'll have an accident of going too fast, this is more than likely where it will happen. But then this next corner, again, is kind of more of a field corner, but I'd say if you need a track cue, it's kind of in the middle of all this painting here on the road is when you start braking. You want to go from 6th to 5th, and as soon as you downshift to 5th, you want to turn in and find this apex. And then just kind of ease on the throttle, but throttle almost through the entire corner, as you can run out pretty wide and this curb will save you. Then you want to keep full throttle through this corner, and then with this corner, what you want to do is kind of as this curb on the right is getting over with, you want to start braking, and you want to hug this corner, but you don't want to try to track out. You want to try to stay to the inside after this corner. So I shoot down. Oh, never mind. I stay in 6th gear here, through here. But you want to, you want to find the second apex here, which I do, which will set you up pretty well for this next corner. I kind of send it going into this corner, but you want to find this curb, and you want to cut this curb. This curb is one of the only ones on the track you actually want to cut, as it really doesn't unsettle the car too much, as it's pretty flat. But you want to kind of feather the throttle and find a way to, like, I completely let off, but you want to basically put your car over this curb, as it will give you the best run going into the next corner. And then you're able to track out as this curb will catch you. Then for this next corner, I find the end of this curbing to start braking. I'm down to 5th through here, and I'm turning right away for the corner. And then as soon as I get into the corner is when I kind of feather the throttle or just fully accelerate out. But you don't want to go too fast over this blind corner, as you'll go off track. So I kind of feather it, and then I find once I get through the corner is when I can accelerate for it, as there's a little bit of curbing to catch you if you go too far off. Then for this next one, you shoot over to the right side. Or at least you angle your car over to the right side here. And kind of as you see this black sign in front of you is when you want to start braking. I shoot from 5th gear down to 4th here. And then there's 2 apexes that you want that are on this corner. I kind of just lift through this first one. You don't necessarily want to touch it, but the next one is when you want to touch. And then once I get through the first one and I'm getting prepared for the second one, usually I feel like I have enough speed so that I can accelerate and still hit this next apex. But it's definitely a late apex. It's late enough that you actually don't want to hit this red and white curbing. You actually want to run over this gray curbing that comes after it, as it sets you up perfectly for this next corner. Where as soon as this gray curbing is over, you shoot down to 4th gear and start turning in for the next corner. So you shoot down to 4th gear, and once you get over this little hump, or a little before is when you want to start turning in. This corner, since it's cambered, will help you turn in here. But this one's kind of another late apex corner, but you want to find the apex late. And then you are able to, once you get out of that corner, you're able to, oh no, I already am accelerating. I just caught myself in the middle of a shift. Once I hit the apex is when I start accelerating out. And then this curb on the outside, feel free to go right over it. I always go right over it. I usually run my car along here just because it's the widest I can go and it's the best angle I can have at the following corner, which is kind of weird because the curb runs out, but you actually want to go beyond the curb running out to start braking. And it looks like I kind of start braking as the curb runs out. I believe I go kind of wide out of this corner, but if you brake a little bit more for this corner, you're able to get still a pretty good run out of the corner. But anyways, I kind of use the curb kind of cutting off here to turn in. So I go from 5th, I stay in 5th. And then another late apex corner, I try to find the apex just as I'm getting out of the corner. Right about here, and then I'm accelerating once I hit the apex. And then I was going a tad bit too fast through the corner, so I had to feather the throttle. But another curb where you want to kind of go over the curb almost here. So I kind of shoot it almost out in the grass, or the sand. I think I actually kind of hit the sand. Yeah, I hit the sand a little bit. But that's totally fine. It won't necessarily destroy your car. But yeah, so I get out of that corner, then shoot back to the right for this left-hander. And I kind of start braking as soon as I feel myself going back up this little hill. Or for those who need a visual cue, it's where this pavement color changes. Another one on the track. But I go from 5th gear down to 4th. And a little bit of a late apex corner here. But you want to, yeah, so a late apex corner, and then you're able to accelerate at the apex, and then you get to another curb where you can basically run right over it. I cut this as much as possible just because it's not a corner that would kill me if I run over the curb, but it's more or less just a shortcut on the track. Then you get to this part of the track where there's a big dip, where you actually catch air a little bit. I use that as my braking zone. So in some cars I'll brake like as I hit the ground. With the Jetta you can brake a little bit after. So I kind of brake when I'm at the dip of the dip of the valley there, I guess, or whatever, the bottommost part on the track. And I just kind of just hit the brake and then get right off of it, as it'll slow my car down enough that I can just take this corner. And I'm just kind of eased on the throttle because you want to hug this apex, and then you also want to hug this apex or be around the inside of that corner. I'm a little off in the middle, but that's fine because there's plenty of track after that, and it's not really that sharp of a corner. And then you want to kind of stay to the inside here because your car will feel really light, and you obviously don't want to go too wide, otherwise you'll catch it in the grass. Then these next corners, I'm full throttle through the entire things. They're just really bumpy. A little left, right, left, right, left. Then for this next corner, which I have the most difficulty with, I don't know why, I just can never find a good point to brake. But this one, like the other one, I wait until I find this entire curb. Wait until I see the entire curb. For visual cues, it's probably actually like right as you see the pavement change here, kind of a little bit farther than what I do. But this one, you want to brake and then turn in. So I turn in a little early. I have to recorrect myself, and I actually hit the curb. But you can go down to 5th gear in this one if you want, but eventually you need to be in 5th gear, whether it's through this one or the next one. But this one's a really late apex corner. I wish I would have found an actual good corner of that one, but that's what I ended up doing. The curb, they won't kill you if you don't smack them, but if you just... Yeah, I mean, well, they'll kill you if you smack them, but if you just, like, tap them, it's totally fine. The car will just get air, that's all. But anyways, back on the throttle kind of as soon as I know I'm through the corner. And then this one, you're going to want to shoot as far right as possible, but not too far right, just because it'll kill your speed if you go too far to the right. And then kind of, I don't know, this one's another feel corner for me, but for visual cue, it's where this orange barrier goes, I guess, beyond your viewpoint is when I start braking. Eventually you need to be in 5th gear, whether you are before or during the corner, or you can go in 4th gear if you find you went through the corner a little slow. But you want to try to hug the curb on the inside. If you're not all the way on the inside, that's totally fine. But once you hit the apex or through the apex, that's when you want to accelerate out. And then another curb that it's totally fine to run out to. Then hugging this right side for this next corner. This one is another one where you want to wait until the paint is gone to start braking. So once the paint's gone, I shift down. No, I don't know if I don't think I shift down. Yeah, I do shift down. So I just briefly shift down to 4th for the second carousel here. And this one's tricky, as if you get out of it too quickly, it can really unsettle the car, or if you get in it too quickly, it can really unsettle the car. So what you want to shoot for is you want to kind of shoot for this inside line, just because this whole part of the carousel is curved, while this outside part here, kind of, you can see a little line that's not curved. So you want to be inside of the striped pavement. But obviously, because it's cambered, it will help the car turn a little bit more. And so if you shoot for just outside the corner, that's totally fine, as it'll shoot you in. But what I do is I kind of feather the throttle through the entire thing, just to make sure that I have enough speed going through it. And I kind of come out a little wide, I think. I think I could definitely take that corner a little slower. But it ended up working. I just kind of 75% throttle the whole way through. And my car just kind of bounced, but it only bounced all the way out to the outside. You do want to be careful with how quickly you get off of that, because it could just keep bouncing, and you could be friends with that wall there. But I end up just holding it on to the outside, and then for this next corner, I'm all the way on the left side. You don't want to lift at all in this corner. That's the ideal line. But you want to kind of just barely find this apex. You don't want to hit it if you don't want, or you don't want to hit it, let's just say. But you want to kind of keep it there. And then you want to find the outside of these next two corners here. So you want to kind of keep it to the outside. And then for this last corner before the straight, it should feel like a late apex corner. But obviously, like you'll see with me, if you don't hit the apex, that's totally fine. But the key is you just don't want to turn in as much for tire degradation and not to rub off so much speed. So in the straight, I'm pretty sure you guys know how to hold on to the gas. And then for this next corner here, the second to last, or third to last one or whatever, excuse me, you want to start on the right side as late as possible, and then you want to shoot to the left to be as straight as possible for the actual corner. But you kind of want to find where this white line here kind of like sticks out. And to note, this whole part of the track is dipped down, so you're really going to get a big jump off of that if you hit it too, I guess, if you hit it too much or you try to be as close as possible. But oh god. So I'm on the brakes before this little curve here. Make sure I turn in, and then I'm just holding the brakes as I go through. And you want to kind of stay on the left side here. You kind of want to follow this white line until you obviously see the apex, and then you can turn in for the apex. I go from 6th down to 4th, and then not exactly ideally, but I always try to keep my right tires on the right side of this gray curb. It's a little bumpy, and it's not exactly the greatest of lines, but it kind of shot me all the way out to this outside curb here, which ended up catching me. But as soon as I knew I was through the corner is when I started accelerating out of this one. And then I lift a little bit just going through that final left. But that's just so I have enough speed, or just enough speed so that I can shoot all the way to the left side for this final corner. And then for this final one, as soon as I see where or how far out I'm going to get, or for visual cue, once this turns into like pink and white instead of red and white, that's when I feel like I'm going straight at it, is when I start braking. And then immediately I'm already turned in for the final corner, which I shoot down to 3rd gear for, try to hug this as much as possible, and then accelerate as soon as I get to the apex of that corner, and you can track out as wide as the gray stuff out there. And yeah, that's a lap around Nürburgring. So what I will do is I will redo the lap here, and I will just have it run from start to finish so you guys can see just what one lap looks like. Pretty sure this is the lap, right? Yeah. Alright, and that is one lap around the Nürburgring Nordschleife Industriefahrten configuration. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, I guess one thing I forgot to mention, that lap was a 7 minute 59.258. I'll put that in the title anyways. But I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the video. But I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you later.